The stars looked different from the observation deck. Eri pressed her blue hand against the cold glass and sighed. Her large, almond-shaped eyes reflected the distant lights of passing ships. As a Loraxian diplomat, she had seen many worlds, but Earth had changed something inside her. "The council meeting starts in 10 minutes, said a deep voice behind her. Eri turned to see Ta, her mate of 5 cycles. His tall, slender frame blocked the doorway. Once, his presence had brought her comfort. Now she felt only unease. "I will be there," she said. "I need a moment to prepare." Ta nodded and left. Eri turned back to the window. The human colony of New Frontier spread out below the orbital station, its lights blinking in the darkness. Her people, the Loraxians, saw humans as dangerous and unpredictable. The Galactic Council wanted to keep humans isolated, away from other species. But Eri knew better. During her 3 months on Earth, she had seen humans build, create, and care for each other. They were different, yes, but not the monsters the Council claimed. Her communicator buzzed. A message from her human contact, marked urgent. "KONCL knows. Escape no." Eri's heart beat faster. She deleted the message and headed for the exit, not toward the council chambers, but toward the shuttle bay. The halls were quiet. Too quiet. As she rounded the corner, 5 Loraxian guards blocked her path. Behind them stood Ta, his face cold and hard. "Going somewhere?" he asked. "I forgot something in my quarters," Eri said, trying to keep her voice steady. Ta walked toward her slowly. "You forgot your loyalty, your duty, your honor." The guards moved closer. Eri backed away. "I don't know what you mean." "We found your hidden messages," Ta said. "Your secret meetings with the humans. Your plans for an alliance against the Council's wishes." His voice was like ice. "You would betray your own kind for these primitives." "The Council is wrong about humans," Eri said, standing straight. "They have much to offer the galaxy. The Council fears them because they cannot control them." Tay's face showed no emotion. "The Council was right to place me as your mate. 5 cycles of watching, waiting for you to reveal your true nature." He touched her face with long blue fingers. "And you did not disappoint." The betrayal hit Eri like a physical blow. 5 cycles of shared life, all a lie. Ta had never loved her. He had been the Council's spy all along. "Take her," Ta ordered. Eri fought, her natural Loraxian strength giving her advantage. She knocked 2 guards down, but something sharp pricked her neck. The world began to spin. "A special drug," Ta said as she fell to her knees. "It blocks your neural pathways, very effective on traitors." Through blurry eyes, Eri watched Ta kneel beside her. "The Council ordered your public trial, but I convinced them that would only spread your dangerous ideas." He stroked her hair almost gently. "Instead, you will simply disappear." The room darkened as Eri fought to stay conscious. She felt herself being lifted, carried through dark corridors. "Load her on the shuttle," she heard Tai say. No records, no witnesses. Cold metal closed around her wrists and ankles. Special chains, designed to hold even Loraxian strength. "Where?" a voice asked. "The human colony below," Tai answered. "A fitting end for a human sympathizer." Eri tried to speak, to fight, but her body would not respond. As darkness took her, one thought remained clear. Everything she had worked for, everything she had believed in, was now lost. And the one who had taken it all was the one she had trusted most. The shuttle engines rumbled to life. Inside its dark cargo hold, chained and drugged, Eri began the journey to what Tai planned as her final destination. Eri woke slowly. Her head hurt, and her mouth felt dry. The drug was wearing off, but her thoughts were still foggy. She tried to move her arms, but the heavy chains held tight. Through half-open eyes, she saw the shuttle had landed. The door opened with a hiss. "She's waking up," a voice said. "Give her another dose." "No," Tay replied. "I want her aware for this. I want her to understand." Rough hands grabbed Eri and dragged her from the shuttle. The cool night air of New Frontier hit her face. Stars shone brightly above unfamiliar mountains. This place was far from the main human settlement, she realized. Somewhere remote. Tai and 2 other Loraxians pulled her across rocky ground. Eri tried to speak, but her tongue felt thick and heavy. "Save your strength," Ta said. "You'll need it." After walking for several minutes, they stopped. Eri heard a low humming sound. As her vision cleared, she saw they stood beside 2 parallel metal tracks that stretched into the darkness in both directions. The tracks glowed faintly with blue energy, a maglev system the humans used for cargo transport between settlements. "The humans run a heavy transport along this track at midnight," Ta said, checking a small device. "That's in exactly 42 minutes. Now Eri understood. Cold fear spread through her body. "This is not a trial," she managed to say. "This is murder." Ta knelt beside her. "This is justice. You chose humans over your own kind." One of the other Loraxians looked nervous. "The council said to eliminate her quietly. Is this wise? If humans find her body—" "They won't," Tai interrupted. "These cargo transports weigh over 200 tons and move at 300 units per hour. There will be nothing left to find." He smiled without warmth. "Besides, the tracks need maintenance tomorrow. Any evidence will be cleaned up by the humans themselves." The 2 Loraxians forced Eri down, pressing her against the hard metal of the tracks. Ta produced more chains, these with magnetic locks that attached firmly to the track itself. "Why?" Eri asked as they secured her. "Why not just kill me on the station?" Ta finished the last lock before answering. "Because this sends a message. Any Loraxian who sides with humans will meet a human-made end." Eri pulled against the chains, but they were too strong, especially with the drug still in her system. The metal dug into her blue skin. She was completely trapped, spread eagle across the tracks. "The transport will come from the east," Ta said, pointing down the long stretch of track. "You'll hear it before you see it. The ground will shake." He checked his device again. 38 minutes now. The second Loraxian placed a small camera on a nearby rock. "To confirm it's done," he explained. "No one will come this way before the transport," Ta said. "This section is only used for automated cargo. No passengers." Eri looked up at the stars. "The humans will learn what you've done," she said. "They are not what you think. They will find out, and they will not forgive." Ta laughed. "Your faith in them is touching and misplaced." He nodded to his companions. "We're done here." The 3 Loraxians walked back toward their shuttle, leaving Eri alone on the tracks. As they disappeared into the darkness, Eri took a deep breath. The drug was wearing off more now. She could think more clearly, but the special chains were designed to hold even Loraxian strength. She looked east, where Ta said the transport would come from. The night was quiet except for strange animal sounds from the nearby forest. Eri tested each chain again, methodically pulling and twisting. No weakness, no give. In the distance, she heard the shuttle engines start. Her former mate was leaving, confident in her death. 35 minutes until the transport would arrive. Eri closed her eyes. Was this how it would end? All her work, all her hopes for an alliance, crushed like she soon would be. Then she heard something, a different sound from the forest noises, a mechanical hum, but not from the direction of the coming transport. Something smaller, faster, coming from the west. Someone was approaching. Jin checked the monitors at the small transit outpost for the 3rd time that night. The midnight cargo transport was due in 30 minutes, and all systems needed to be perfect. He liked the quiet of the night shift. After 5 years in Earth's space fleet, the peaceful solitude of New Frontier's outer regions was exactly what he needed. He sipped his coffee and ran the standard pre-transport scan of the track. The computer beeped, showing an anomaly on Section 42, about 10 kilometers west of the outpost. "Probably another fallen tree," Jin muttered to himself. The forest creatures of New Frontier often knocked things onto the tracks. Usually, the automatic systems would clear small objects, but larger ones needed human attention. Jin grabbed his jacket and equipment belt. Better safe than sorry. The cargo transport carried medical supplies for the main settlement, and any delay would cause problems. Outside, Jin climbed onto his maintenance speeder, a small hover vehicle that could travel quickly along the side of the maglev tracks. The night air was cool against his face as he sped toward Section 42. His headlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the metal tracks glowing with blue energy. As Jin approached the anomaly, he slowed down. His light caught something on the tracks ahead. Not a tree. Something blue. Something moving. Jin stopped the speeder and jumped off, hand moving to the small blaster on his belt. New Frontier had dangerous wildlife, and he wasn't taking chances. "Hello," he called, approaching cautiously. "Is someone there?" His light revealed something that made him freeze. A person. No, not a human. Was chained to the tracks. Blue skin, larger eyes, slender limbs, a Loraxian. Jin had seen pictures but never met one in person. They rarely visited human colonies. The Loraxian woman looked at him with large, frightened eyes. "Help," she said in broken human language. "Please help." Jin holstered his blaster and ran forward, kneeling beside her. "What happened? Who did this to you?" he asked, examining the chains. They were like nothing he had seen before, not standard restraints. "My people," she replied, her voice weak. "Ta. My mate. Betrayal." Jin checked his watch. 25 minutes until the transport would arrive. He pulled at the chains, but they didn't budge. "My name is Jin," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'm going to get you out of here." He took tools from his belt and tried to cut the chains. The metal was too strong for his standard equipment. "These aren't normal chains," he said, frustrated. "Loraxian metal," she explained, "made to hold our strength." Jin stood up and looked east down the tracks. In the distance, he could see the faint glow of the outpost. The transport would come from there soon. "Your name?" he asked. "Eri," she replied. "Diplomat." Jin made a quick decision. He pulled out his communication device and contacted the outpost. "Emergency override, authorization Jin Delta 7, he said. "Activate safety protocol for midnight transport, Section 42. A computerized voice responded. "Safety protocol activated. Transport speed will reduce to 20 units per hour in Section 42. Warning, full stop not possible due to cargo weight and momentum." Jin put the device away. "That will give us more time, but we still need to get you free." He looked around, then ran to his speeder. From a compartment, he pulled out emergency equipment, including a small plasma cutter used for track repairs. "This might work," he said, returning to Eri. "It's designed for the track metal. Hold still." Jin activated the plasma cutter. Its blue flame was hot enough to repair the special alloys of the maglev system. He carefully applied it to the first chain lock. "Why help me?" Eri asked as he worked. "You don't know me." Jin didn't look up from his work. "You're in trouble." "That's all I need to know." The first lock broke open. Jin moved to the next one. "3 more," he said. "We can do this." In the distance, a low rumble began. The transport was coming early. Jin worked faster, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cool night air. The second lock broke. "It's coming," Eri said, fear in her voice. "I know," Jin replied, moving to the third lock. "But I'm not leaving you here." The ground began to vibrate slightly. Jin broke the third lock and moved to the final one. The rumble grew louder. Time was running out. The rumble grew louder as Jin worked on the final lock. His hands were steady, but sweat dripped down his face. The plasma cutter's blue flame cut slowly through the alien metal. "It's not breaking fast enough," Jin said through gritted teeth. Eri's large eyes looked east. A distant light was now visible. The transport was coming, slowed by Jin's emergency override, but still moving with unstoppable force. "Leave me," Eri said. "Save yourself." Jin didn't even look up. Not happening. The ground shook more strongly now. Jin could feel the vibrations through his knees as he knelt beside the tracks. The plasma cutter was overheating, its power dropping. "Come on," Jin muttered, adjusting the tool. The lock was half cut, but the cutter's flame grew weaker. The transport's light grew brighter, its massive form now visible in the distance. Even at the reduced speed, Jin knew they had less than 2 minutes. The plasma cutter sputtered and died. No. Jin hit the tool against his palm, but it was dead. The power cell was drained. Eri closed her eyes, accepting her fate. "Thank you for trying." But Jin wasn't ready to give up. He grabbed the chain with both hands and pulled with all his strength. The metal dug into his palms, but he kept pulling. His muscles strained, and his face turned red with effort. "It won't break," he gasped. Then he had an idea. He quickly went to his speeder and returned with a small container. He poured liquid from it onto the partially cut lock. "Coolant," he explained, "might make the metal brittle where it's been heated." The transport was close now, its engine roaring. The tracks hummed with energy. Jin struck the lock with a heavy tool from his belt. Once, twice. On the third hit, the weakened metal cracked. Yes, Jin pulled at the chain, and it came free. Eri's leg was released. But the transport was too close. Its massive front car was only 100 meters away, its lights blinding them. "No time for the speeder," Jin shouted over the noise. He grabbed Eri around the waist and began to pull her off the tracks. The 3 broken chains allowed some movement, but the 4th still held her other leg firmly to the track. The transport bore down on them, its warning horn blaring. 70 meters. 60. Jin pulled harder. Eri twisted her body, trying to help. The chain stretched tight. 50 meters. 40. "It's not breaking," Eri cried. Jin looked at the oncoming transport, then at the chain. He made a split-second decision. He positioned himself between Eri and the chain's anchor point. Bracing his feet against the track, he pulled with everything he had, using his body as a lever. 30 meters. 20. "Jin!" Eri screamed over the deafening noise. With a sudden snap, the metal gave way, not at the lock, but at the track itself. The force sent Jin and Eri tumbling down the embankment beside the tracks. They rolled through dirt and rocks, Jin holding Eri tightly to protect her from the impact. They came to a stop in a tangle of limbs and chains just as the transport thundered past, the ground shaking violently beneath them. The rushing wind of the massive vehicle washed over them. For several long moments, they lay still, the noise so loud they could feel it in their bones. Then, slowly, the transport passed, continuing west toward the main settlement. Jin opened his eyes. They were alive. He looked down and saw Eri clutched tightly in his arms, her blue face pressed against his chest. She was shaking. Carefully, he loosened his grip. "Are you okay?" Eri slowly raised her head. Her large eyes met his, filled with disbelief and something else. Wonder. "You saved me," she said softly. "You risked your life." "Why?" Jin sat up, helping her to sit as well. In the moonlight, he could see cuts and bruises on her blue skin, and the broken chains still attached to her wrists and one ankle. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. For a moment, they just looked at each other, 2 beings from different worlds, connected by a moment of courage. Then Jin stood and offered his hand. "Let's get those chains off you completely. Then we need to get somewhere safe." Eri took his hand, feeling for the first time that perhaps not all was lost after all. Jin's small home sat on the edge of the outpost, away from the few other buildings. It was simple. 1 main room with a kitchen area, a bedroom, and a bathroom. But it was clean and warm. Eri sat on Jin's couch, wrapped in a blanket. Jin had used his tools to remove the remaining chains from her wrists and ankle. The skin beneath was raw and bruised. "This might sting," Jin said, gently applying medicine to her wounds. "But it will help heal." Eri winced but didn't pull away. "Thank you," she said quietly. Jin finished bandaging her injuries and sat down across from her. "Are you hungry? I can make something to eat." Eri nodded. "Yes. The drug they gave me. It makes the body weak." While Jin prepared a simple meal, Eri looked around the room. Unlike the cold, perfect lines of Loraxian homes, Jin's place was lived in. Books on shelves, pictures on walls, a jacket thrown over a chair. It felt real. Jin returned with 2 bowls of hot soup and some bread. "It's nothing fancy," he said, "but it's good." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Jin spoke. "So, you're a diplomat?" Eri nodded. "Yes, I was sent to study humans, to report back to my people." "And your people tried to kill you for it?" Jin asked. Eri put down her spoon. "Not for studying. For what I learned." She looked directly at Jin. "The Galactic Council, the group that controls space travel and trade between worlds, they want to keep humans isolated. They tell all species that humans are dangerous, unpredictable." "We can be," Jin admitted. "All species can," Eri said. "But the Council fears humans because they cannot control you. Your technology grows too fast. Your people adapt too quickly." Jin listened as Eri explained more about the politics between species, how the Council had placed Tai as her mate to watch her, how they feared an alliance between humans and Loraxians. "So your mate betrayed you," Jin said when she finished. "He was never really my mate," Eri said bitterly. 5 cycles, what you would call years, all a lie." Jin stood and went to a small desk. He returned with a device and placed it on the table between them. "A translator," he explained. "Better than struggling with my language." Eri placed the small device near her throat. It hummed softly as it synced with her neural patterns. "Can you understand me better now?" she asked, her words now perfectly clear in Jin's language. Jin nodded. "Much better." With the translator working, Eri explained more details. How some in human leadership might be working with the Council. How her death was meant to look like an accident, preventing any questions about her disappearance. "They will know I'm alive soon," she said. "The camera they left would have shown your rescue." Jin's face grew serious. "Then we need to be careful. Will they come after you again?" "Yes," Eri said without hesitation. "Ta will not accept failure." Jin looked out the window. Dawn was breaking over the forest. "We should move soon then. This is the first place they'll look." Eri studied Jin's face in the early morning light. "Why are you helping me? Your people and mine have no alliance, no treaties. You owe me nothing." Jin turned to her. "Where I come from, we don't need a treaty to do the right thing. The Council says humans only care about themselves," Eri said. "That you destroy everything you touch." Jin smiled slightly. "And yet, here you are, saved by a human while your own kind tried to kill you. Who do you believe now?" Eri was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I believed in humans before tonight. That's why they wanted me dead." She met Jin's eyes. "Now I know I was right." Jin checked his communication device. "We should rest for a few hours, then move. I know a place they won't find us easily." As Jin prepared the small bedroom for Eri, she watched him. This human had risked his life for a stranger, an alien. Everything the Council feared about humans was wrong. Their compassion, their willingness to help others. These weren't weaknesses. They were strengths that the Council could never understand. For the first time since her betrayal, Eri felt hope. Perhaps all was not lost after all. Tai slammed his fist against the wall of the small ship. The screen before him showed the empty train tracks. Empty. The camera had captured everything. The humans' arrival, the rescue, their escape just seconds before the transport passed. She lives, he growled. The two other Loraxians looked nervous. The council will not be pleased, one said quietly. Tay turned to them, his eyes cold. The council will never know. We will find them and finish this. He pointed to the navigation system. Set course for the human colony. We hunt them ourselves. Jin's speeder moved quietly through the forest. Eri sat behind him, holding tight as they followed a narrow path away from the outpost. Jin had packed food, water, and basic supplies before they left. Where are we going? Eri asked, her voice clear through the translator at her throat. An old mining facility, Jin replied. It was abandoned years ago. No one goes there now. They drove for an hour through thick trees and over small hills. Finally, they reached a clearing where several metal buildings stood. Their walls were rusted, and plants grew over parts of them. We'll be safe here for a while, Jin said as they entered the largest building. No one comes this far from the outpost. Inside, Jin cleared a space and set up a small camp. Eri helped, moving tables and old equipment. I need to contact someone, Jin said once they were settled. He pulled out his communication device. Who? Eri asked, suddenly worried. A friend. Someone I trust. Jin pressed a few buttons on the device. Her name is Hana. We served together in the fleet. She works in colony security now. The device buzzed for a moment before a woman's face appeared on the screen. Jin? This is a surprise, Hana said. Her eyes widened when she saw Eri. Is that a Loraxian? Hana, I need your help, Jin said. This is Eri. Her people tried to kill her last night. Jin explained what had happened. Hana listened, her face growing more serious. You believe her? About the council? Hana asked. I saw what they did to her, Jin replied. Why would she lie? Hana was quiet for a moment. What do you need from me? Information, Jin said. Any reports of unauthorized ships landing near the colony. And keep this quiet. Eri thinks some humans might be working with the council. Hana nodded. I'll see what I can find. Be careful, Jin. After the call ended, Jin showed Eri how to use a human blaster. Just in case, he said. Eri held the weapon carefully. I am a diplomat, not a fighter. Sometimes we don't get to choose, Jin replied. Tay's ship landed in a hidden spot 10 kilometers from the human outpost. The three Loraxians moved through the forest like shadows. The tracker shows her translator is active, one said, checking the small device. Northeast, about 20 kilometers. Tay smiled coldly. Good. She thinks she's safe. They reached the outpost as night fell. Few humans were out. Tay approached the small home at the edge of the settlement. Jin's home. Empty, he said after looking through a window. But they were here. He picked up a bandage with blue stains. Loraxian blood. Not long ago. Tay's device beeped softly. Message from our human contact, he said, reading the screen. Some human named Jin contacted colony security. A woman named Hana. Tay's eyes narrowed. Find out everything about this Hana. She will lead us to them. At the mining facility, Jin set up simple alarms around the perimeter, strings with metal pieces that would make noise if someone crossed them. Inside, he and Eri studied old maps of the colony. If they come for us, we need escape routes, Jin said. Eri looked at him. You should not be involved in this, Jin. This is my problem. Jin didn't look up from the maps. You became my problem when I found you on those tracks. Why? Eri asked. You could have left after, taken me to your leaders. Why help me hide? Jin finally met her eyes. Because you said people in my government might be working with the council. That means I don't know who to trust. He pointed to the star map on the wall. And because what you're fighting for matters, humans should know what's happening out there. Eri felt something strange, a warmth in her chest. On her world, no one had ever stood with her like this. Outside, the sun began to set. Neither of them knew that 3 Loraxians were already hunting them, moving steadily closer with each passing hour. Morning light filtered through the dirty windows of the mining facility. Jin had been awake for hours, checking the perimeter alarms. Eri was examining the old computers in the main office. "Jin," she called suddenly. "Come look at this." Jin hurried to her side. Eri had managed to power up one of the old data servers. "These mining facilities reported directly to Earth," she explained, her fingers moving quickly over the control panel. "This one was abandoned, but the data system still works." "Why is that important?" Jin asked, watching her work. "Because." Eri's face lit up as files appeared on the screen. "These systems record all official communications, including secret ones." Jin leaned closer. "What did you find?" "Meeting logs," Eri said, "between human officials and—" She paused, her large eyes widening. "Council representatives, here on New Frontier." Jin read the screen. The logs showed meetings from just months ago, secret meetings that were never made public. "This one," Eri pointed. "The human name, Governor Marsh. Do you know him?" Jin nodded slowly. "He's in charge of this whole colony." They opened the file. Inside were plans. Terrible plans. The Council and certain human leaders had agreed to eliminate anyone who supported an alliance between their species. They would stage attacks, blame each side, and start a war. "A war neither side wants," Eri said softly, "but one that would weaken both humans and Loraxians." "Leaving the Council to control everything," Jin finished, "including the disputed territories along the Nexus route." Eri looked at Jin. "My crime was believing humans and Loraxians could work together, but I was right all along." Jin's communication device beeped. It was Hana. "Jin, you need to move," she said, her face worried on the small screen. "I found reports of an unregistered ship landing near the outpost last night, and someone accessed my security files. Someone with high-level clearance." "The governor?" Jin asked. Hana's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "We found something, Hana," Jin said. "Evidence of a conspiracy. I'm sending you a copy now." As Jin transferred the files, Eri prepared a second copy for her remaining loyal contacts in the Loraxian diplomatic corps. "My access codes still work," she said with surprise. "They haven't locked me out of the system yet." "Can you trust whoever you're sending this to?" Jin asked. Eri nodded. "With my life." They were skeptical of the Council long before I was. Outside, one of Jin's alarms made a soft ringing sound. Someone had crossed the perimeter. "They're here," Jin whispered, grabbing his blaster. "We need to move." They gathered their few belongings quickly. Jin led Eri toward a back exit, away from where the alarm had triggered. "There's an old maintenance tunnel," he explained, pointing to a rusty door. "It leads to the hillside." Just as they reached the door, Jin's device beeped again. Hana's voice came through, urgent and clear. "Jin, I've seen the files. This is bigger than we thought. I'm sending a security team to you. Hold your position if you can." Jin looked at Eri. "What do you want to do? Run or stay and fight?" Eri thought for a moment. "The evidence is sent. Now the truth will spread, with or without us." She took the blaster Jin had given her. "I'm tired of running." Jin smiled slightly. "Then we make a stand." They moved to a defendable position in the main office. Through the windows, they could see 3 figures approaching, Loraxians moving with military precision. "Tai is with them," Eri said, recognizing her former mate's tall form. Jin checked his blaster. "Hana's team is at least 30 minutes away." Eri looked at Jin, this human who had saved her and now stood ready to fight beside her. In just 2 days, he had shown more loyalty than Tai had in 5 cycles. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "thank you for showing me that my faith in humans was not misplaced." Jin met her eyes. "And thank you for being worth saving." Outside, Tai and his hunters stopped at the main entrance. The door slid open with a metallic groan. The hunt was over. The confrontation was about to begin. Ta stepped into the mining facility, his two companions close behind him. Their footsteps echoed in the large empty space. Each held a Loraxian weapon, sleek, blue-glowing devices that could stun or kill. "We know you're here, Eri," Todd called, his voice bouncing off the metal walls. "You and your human pet." Behind a stack of old containers, Jin and Eri crouched low. Jin held up 3 fingers, mouthing the words, "3 of them." Eri nodded. "The human governor is very upset," Ta continued, moving deeper into the facility. "You've accessed restricted files. That's a crime on any world." Jin pointed to a side passage, then to himself. Eri understood. He would move to flank them. She nodded again, gripping her blaster tightly. "I have no wish to harm you, Eri," Ta said, sounding almost sad. "The Council only wants what's best for all species." Eri could stand it no longer. She stepped out from behind the containers, her blaster pointed at Ta. "By starting a war. By killing those who want peace." Ta stopped, his eyes fixing on her. "Peace on human terms is not peace at all." "Those files show the truth," Eri said, keeping her blaster steady. "You and the Council fear humans because you can't control them." Tay's companions spread out, weapons ready. They looked nervous, glancing around for Jin. "Where's your human friend?" Tai asked, taking a step forward. "Right here," Jin said, stepping out from a doorway behind Ta. His blaster was pointed at Ta's back. "Drop your weapons." For a moment, no one moved. Then Ta smiled. "You think you've won something. The files. By now the Council knows you have them. They'll say they're fake." "Maybe," Jin said, "but they're already spreading through both our worlds. People will ask questions." One of Ta's companions lowered his weapon slightly. "Is it true? About starting a war between our species?" "Don't listen to them, Ren," Ta snapped. "They're traitors." "The only traitor is someone who would sacrifice their own people for power," Eri said. She looked at Ren and the other Loraxian. "The Council doesn't care about Loraxians or humans. They only care about control." Jin moved closer, his blaster still trained on Ta. "Your ship. Did you file a flight plan with colony control?" The second Loraxian looked uncertain. "No," Ta said, "it wasn't necessary." "Because he doesn't want anyone to know you're here," Jin said. "If you kill us, there will be no record of you ever landing on New Frontier." Doubt showed on the faces of Ta's companions. Ta saw it too. "Enough talking," he shouted, suddenly raising his weapon toward Eri. Jin fired first. His blaster shot hit Ta's arm, making him drop his weapon. Ta cried out in pain and fell to one knee. The other Loraxians didn't move to help him. Instead, Ren stepped back, lowering his weapon completely. "I didn't agree to murder Ta," he said. "The Council said we were protecting our people." The facility door slid open. Hannah entered, followed by 4 armed security officers. "Colonial security," she announced. "Everyone drop your weapons." Jin lowered his blaster slowly, nodding to Eri to do the same. Ren and the other Loraxian put their weapons on the ground immediately. Only Tai remained defiant. With his good arm, he reached for a small device on his belt. "This isn't over," he hissed. "The Council will never allow." His own companion, Ren, kicked the device from his hand. "Enough, Ta. I've seen the truth now." Hannah's officers moved in, securing everyone's weapons and placing restraints on Ta. "We received your files," Hannah told Jin and Eri. "They're already being verified by Earth authorities." She looked at Ta. "And we have a special holding cell for those who try to murder people on our colony." As the officers led Tai away, he glared at Eri. "You've doomed our species by trusting humans." Eri shook her head. "No, Ta. I saved it." When everyone else had left, Jin and Eri stood alone in the middle of the facility. Eri's hands were shaking, The confrontation had taken more from her than she wanted to admit. Jin gently touched her shoulder. "It's over. You're safe now." Eri looked at him. "No, it's not over. It's just beginning." She took a deep breath. "Now we have to build something new, something better." Jin smiled. Together. For the first time since her betrayal, Eri smiled too. Together. 3 months had passed since the standoff at the mining facility. New Frontier's main settlement was busy with visitors from both human colonies and Loraxian worlds. The evidence Jin and Eri had discovered had spread quickly through both societies. Eri stood at the window of the new embassy building, watching humans and Loraxians walking together in the street below. She wore formal diplomatic robes and a small pin showing intertwined human and Loraxian symbols. "Ambassador Eri," a human assistant said from the doorway. "The council representatives have arrived." Eri nodded. "Thank you. I'll be there shortly." The room where the meeting would take place was large and bright. Around a circular table sat leaders from Earth, Loraxian worlds, and 3 members of the reformed Galactic Council. The old council had fallen after the conspiracy was revealed. Many corrupt officials had been removed from power. Eri entered and took her seat. As the new ambassador to humans, she led the Loraxian delegation. Governor March had been replaced by Hana, who now represented New Frontier. "We are here to sign the first formal alliance between humans and Loraxians," Eri began. "For too long, we were kept apart by fear and lies. Today, we changed that." The documents were signed one by one. Trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, military cooperation. With each signature, the gap between their worlds grew smaller. After the meeting, Eri slipped away from the celebrations. She took a small transport to the outskirts of the settlement, where a familiar outpost stood. Jin's home looked the same, though flowers now grew in boxes outside the windows. Jin was working on his speeder when she arrived. He looked up and smiled, putting down his tools. "Ambassador," he said with a small bow. "You honor my humble home." Eri laughed. "Stop that. I'm still just Eri to you." They sat outside as the sun began to set. Jin had refused all offers of rewards or positions after what happened. He had returned to his quiet life at the outpost, though he now helped train new security teams. "They offered me a position on Earth," Eri said after a while, "to lead the new Joint Diplomatic Corps." Jin looked at her. "That's a great honor. Will you take it?" Eri was quiet for a moment. "I told them I prefer to stay on New Frontier. My work is here." Jin nodded, trying not to show how pleased he was by this news. "Tomorrow," Eri continued, "we're dedicating a monument. At the section of track where you found me." She turned to him. "Will you come?" The next day, a small crowd gathered at Section 42 of the maglev tracks. The transport line had been rerouted slightly, leaving the original section preserved. A simple stone marker stood beside it, with words in both human and Loraxian script. Eri spoke to the assembled guests. 3 months ago, I was chained to these tracks by those who feared change. A human named Jin saved me that night." She looked at Jin, who stood quietly at the back of the crowd. "He didn't know me. He didn't know my politics or my species' history with his. He simply saw someone in need and acted." She placed her hand on the stone marker. "This monument stands not just for me or for Jin, but for what we can achieve together." The inscription reads, "Where humanity proved its worth." As the crowd dispersed, Jin approached the marker. Eri stood waiting for him. "Too dramatic?" she asked with a small smile. Jin shook his head. "It's perfect." They walked together along the edge of the forest. In the distance, a transport moved along the new track, carrying goods between human and Loraxian settlements. "What happens now?" Jin asked. Eri looked up at the sky, where stars were just becoming visible. "Now we build something new. Together." Jin smiled. "I'd like that." As they walked back toward the settlement, Eri thought about the chains that had once held her to those tracks. They had been meant as her end. Instead, they had become the beginning of something much greater, a bond between two worlds that had once been kept apart by fear, but were now joined by understanding, respect, and hope. The chains were gone, but the connection they had created would last for generations to come.